Have you ever found yourself standing next to someone at a bus stop, and for a second you thought, should I say something? But then the questions come rushing in. What if I mess up? What if they don't understand me? What if I sound silly? Hi friends, I'm Jackson, and welcome back to Jackson, English Stories. Today's story is about one of those moments. It's about a stranger I almost didn't talk to. It's about 5 English words that changed the way I learn, speak, and feel about English. Back then, I was the kind of learner who stayed quiet. I had studied grammar, memorized vocabulary, passed all the tests. But when it came to speaking, I froze, always waiting for the perfect sentence, the perfect timing, the perfect accent. And because I waited, I stayed silent. But one day, in the most ordinary place, something happened. I said something, imperfect, unplanned, honest. And what followed surprised me. That one awkward little sentence did more for my English than months of studying ever had. So in today's video, I want to share that moment with you, because maybe you've been there too, hesitating, overthinking, staying silent when all you wanted was to connect. Maybe, just maybe, talking to a stranger is exactly what your English needs. Let's dive in. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I had just finished my shift at a small coffee near downtown, and I was waiting for the bus. Headphones in, hood up, mind somewhere between too tired to talk and too scared to try. Next to me was a man, maybe in his 60s. He had a bright yellow umbrella and the kind of face that looked like it had seen everything and still chose to smile. He looked over, then said, "Cold, huh?" And that moment, I panicked. I heard the words. I understood them. But inside my head, a war started. What do I say? Should I answer? What if I get the verb tense wrong? And then, something inside me just whispered, "Try." So I said, "Yes, very cold today." Was it perfect English? No. But you know what happened next? He nodded, smiled, and said, "I like the rain. It keeps the city quiet." And just like that, we started talking. We talked about the weather, then about coffee, then about his grandchildren. And for the first time, I wasn't thinking about grammar. I wasn't translating. I was just talking. That conversation only lasted 10 minutes. But when I got on that bus, I felt different. Not because I had spoken perfect English, but because I had used my English. I had connected. I had made it real. And here's the thing. I almost didn't say anything. I almost missed that moment because of fear. Fear of mistakes. Fear of not being good enough. But instead, I took a tiny step. And that step opened something in me. It wasn't about fluency. It was about courage. And that changed everything. After that day, something shifted in me. I started to pay attention, not just to my English books, but to the people around me, at the grocery store, in the elevator, waiting in line for coffee. I noticed how often we're surrounded by strangers, and how many opportunities we miss because we're afraid to speak. And I realized I'm not the only one. One afternoon, I met a guy named Luis in a local language exchange group. He was from Mexico, a software engineer who had been learning English for over 10 years. He could write essays, read technical manuals, even understand English podcasts. But speaking? That terrified him. "My English is good," he said, "but only in my head." He told me how he once sat next to an American co-worker at lunch, rehearsed a question in his mind for 5 minutes, and still said nothing. "I felt like a robot," he laughed, "but there was sadness behind it. I know the words. I just can't use them when it matters." Sound familiar? Luis's story isn't rare. It's common. In fact, I've met dozens, no, hundreds of learners just like him. People who study for years, know the grammar, know the theory, but when it's time to speak to a real person, they freeze, and they think it's just them. They think they're broken, but they're not. If you've ever thought, "Why can I understand everything, but I still can't speak?" You're not alone. That's not failure. That's a signal. A signal that your English doesn't need more rules right now. It needs reality. It needs interaction. So many learners live in English silence, where their knowledge is trapped behind fear. But here's the thing. Silence doesn't help you get better. It just helps you get better at staying silent. And what's even harder, most people don't talk about this. We focus so much on tests, exams, and grammar that we forget the point of language is connection. That's why I'm telling you this story, not just mine, but Luis's too. Because maybe his story sounds like yours. And if it does, maybe it's time to unmute your English. So let's talk about the real problem. Not grammar, not vocabulary, not pronunciation. The real reason so many learners stay silent is fear. But not just fear of the language. It's deeper than that. It's fear of looking stupid, of being judged, of making a mistake in front of someone who might laugh or correct you, or worse, just not understand you at all. And that fear doesn't come from nowhere. Many of us grew up in school systems that taught us English as if it were math, get it right or get it wrong. No room for play, no room for mistakes, just pressure, just red marks and correction pens. So we start to believe, if I speak, I must speak perfectly. And if we can't, then better to say nothing. But here's something we forget. Language isn't about perfection. It's about presence. Think about it. Have you ever had a conversation in your native language where you paused, forgot a word, or said something strange? Of course you have. We all do. But in your native language, you don't panic. You laugh. You fix it. You move on. So why do we treat English like a test we must pass instead of a tool we can use? Because somewhere along the way, we were taught that mistakes mean failure. And that's the biggest lie in language learning. I've seen people spend years hiding behind textbooks, waiting for the moment they'd feel ready. And it never comes. Because readiness isn't a place you arrive at. It's a decision. A decision to speak, even when it's messy, even when it's scary, even when you don't feel ready. You don't need more grammar right now. You need permission. Permission to try, to be seen, to speak out loud and say, "This is where I am," and that's okay. So let me ask you something. How many conversations have you missed because you were waiting to be perfect? And more importantly, how many are you willing to miss before you realize fluency starts when silence ends? The turning point didn't come from a new app, a fancy course, or a breakthrough method. It came from something small, ridiculously small. After that first stranger, the man with the yellow umbrella, I made a deal with myself. One sentence, one stranger, every week. That's it. I didn't promise to speak fluently. I didn't commit to 20-minute conversations. I just said, say one sentence to one real person in real life. And that small goal, it changed everything. You see, I stopped chasing perfection and started building momentum. Some weeks I'd say, "Excuse me, what time is it?" Other weeks I'd comment on someone's book at the park. Once I just said "nice shoes" to a cashier. And most of the time the conversations didn't go far. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I was using my voice. The first few times were awkward. I'd stutter, I'd forget words, my hands would sweat. And yes, sometimes people looked confused. But nobody laughed. Nobody told me to stop speaking. In fact, most people were kind, patient, surprised maybe, but in a good way. And the more I spoke, the more I learned, not about grammar, but about courage. Because every sentence I said became a brick in the bridge between what I knew and what I could do. I was no longer learning English in a bubble. I was living it, one sentence at a time. And here's the thing, you can do it too, right where you are. No teacher needed, no perfect accent required. Let me ask you something. What's one sentence you could say to someone this week? Not tomorrow, not next month, this week. One sentence, one smile, one real interaction. That's the beginning. That's the shift. That's how fluency actually begins, not in silence, but in the small, messy, brave moments we decide to speak anyway. And once you've spoken that first sentence, it becomes easier to speak the second. So how do you turn this into a real habit? Not just a good idea you forget tomorrow, but a small, steady practice that builds your confidence day by day. Here's what I did, and what you can start doing today. First, I chose a talking zone, a place where strangers were around, but where small talk felt natural. For me, it was the bus stop, the grocery store, and later, a tiny coffee shop downtown. Your zone could be anywhere, a park bench, a bookstore, even your office building lobby. The key is find a space where interaction can happen naturally without feeling forced. Second, I picked a phrase ahead of time. Just one simple sentence, not a speech, not a complicated question. Something like, "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Or, "Do you know what time the next bus comes?" I had it ready in my mind, so when the moment came, I didn't freeze. Third, I gave myself permission to fail. I told myself, "Jackson, it's okay if they don't understand. It's okay if you forget a word. It's okay if you feel awkward. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is connection." That tiny mental shift, permission instead of pressure, made all the difference. Now you might be thinking, but what if I get stuck? What if I panic? Good. That means you're alive. That means you care. Fear doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you're stepping outside your comfort zone. And that's exactly where growth happens. Let me give you a little assignment. Your first tiny step. This week, choose one place where you can say one sentence in English to one stranger. It can be a cashier, a neighbor, someone walking their dog. Plan your sentence. Practice it in your mind. Then, say it. Just once. That's all. Not perfect. Not long. Just real. And when you do it, whether it feels amazing or absolutely awkward, come back here and tell me. I want to celebrate that small, brave moment with you. Because every big journey in English, it starts with one tiny, shaky, beautiful step. After I started talking to strangers, I noticed something interesting. It wasn't just my confidence that changed, it was my reaction time. My brain got faster, my tongue got looser. I didn't have to build the sentence in my head first. The words came more naturally, not perfect, but available. And here's why. Real conversations build real reflexes. Think about it. When you learn to ride a bike, you don't memorize the theory of balance. You practice. You wobble. You fall. You adjust. And then, one day, you're riding without thinking. Speaking English is the same. You don't think the sentence. You feel it. But that only comes with practice and the right kind. Most learners practice by reading or writing. That's great, but it's not enough. Speaking is a muscle, and muscles grow through repetition, not just recognition. If you want to speak faster, you have to speak more. And yes, that means even when it's awkward. Here's a simple tip that helped me. Echo everything you hear. If someone says, "How's it going?" don't just understand it. Repeat it under your breath. Match their rhythm. Copy their tone. You're not just learning vocabulary, you're building reflexes. This is called shadowing, and it's one of the most powerful tools you can use. Another small practice I loved was, what would I say? In every situation, I'd ask myself, if I had to speak English right now, what would I say? At the train station, in the elevator, at a family dinner. I would mentally rehearse responses, so when a real chance came, I had something ready. And of course, there's pronunciation. You don't need to sound like a native speaker, but you do need to be understandable. And the secret to that? It's not in how your mouth moves. It's in how your ears listen. The more you listen to real English, the rhythm, the stress, the melody, the more your own speech will start to mirror it. English isn't just a language, it's a sound, a beat, a vibe. So let me ask you, are you practicing to speak or just studying to understand? Because the more you speak, out loud, with people, with courage, the faster your mouth and mind will start working together. That's where fluency lives, in the messy middle, in the moment when you don't know the perfect word, but you speak anyway, and somehow, connection still happens. That's the magic. Here's the thing about learning a language. It's not a one-time breakthrough. It's not a magical moment when suddenly you become fluent. It's a rhythm, a quiet, consistent rhythm, like brushing your teeth, like making your bed. It's about showing up, even when you don't feel like it. After I started talking to strangers, I realized something simple but powerful. English isn't something I do once a week. It's something I live a little every day. But let's be honest, we're busy. We've got work, family, bills, stress. So the idea of adding more English to our lives can feel overwhelming. That's why I stopped thinking in hours and started thinking in minutes. I built a 5-minute routine, just 5 minutes a day, and it changed everything. Here's what it looked like. Minute 1. I listened to something short in English. A podcast clip, a video, even a sentence from a movie. Minute 2. I shadowed it, repeated it out loud, trying to match the rhythm and tone. Minute 3. I wrote down one phrase I liked and thought about where I could use it in real life. Minute 4. I imagined a mini conversation. How would I use that phrase with a friend? At a store? At work? Minute 5. I said it out loud, not in my head, not quietly, out loud, because my voice is my training ground. And guess what? 5 minutes turned into 10, then 15. And then it just became part of me. Like breathing. Not a chore. Not a task. A part of my life. You don't need to study 2 hours a day. You need to show up for 5 minutes. With focus, with presence, with heart. Let me ask you, what's your 5 minutes? Morning coffee. Walk to the store. Waiting for your lunch to heat up? You don't need more time. You need more intention. Fluency isn't built in a classroom. It's built in moments. Repeated, lived, felt, spoken. So today, set a reminder. 5 minutes. Choose one action. Do it again tomorrow, and the day after that. Because it's not the big steps that change your English. It's the small ones you take every day. A few months after I made that small promise to myself, 1 sentence, 1 stranger per week, I met someone who reminded me why these little moments matter so much. Her name was Priya. She was a nurse from India who had moved to Canada with her husband. She'd studied English for over 15 years, passed her exams, got her certification, but every time she had to speak to a patient, her hands would shake. "I know what to say," she told me once, "but my mouth forgets how to say it." She started small, just like I did. One sentence at the grocery store. A short, "How's your day?" to the receptionist at the clinic. A comment about the weather in the elevator. Sometimes people answered. Sometimes they didn't. But every time she spoke, she grew a little braver. I still remember the day she texted me. "Jackson, I just explained a medical procedure to a patient." In English. And he understood everything. There were exclamation marks, emojis, voice notes. She was crying. Happy tears. So was I, because I knew that moment wasn't built in one day. It was built through quiet courage, practiced in everyday places, far away from classrooms and textbooks. That's what I want you to hear today. You don't need to move to another country to grow. You don't need a perfect accent. You don't even need a long conversation. You just need to show up. With your voice, your questions, your smile, and your willingness to try, even if your words come out imperfectly. Priya's story is real, just like mine, just like yours. And if she can do it, so can you. So let me ask you, what's your version of that moment? What would it feel like to speak, to connect, to finally be understood in English? That moment is waiting for you, and every small sentence you speak is a step closer to it. So, if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you. Truly. You didn't just watch a video today. You listened to a story. You walked through a journey. And maybe you even saw yourself in it. Because this isn't just my story. It's yours, too. It's about that moment when you have something to say, but fear holds your tongue. It's about the silence you've sat in for too long. And it's about the courage that's been quietly waiting inside you all this time. Maybe today's story reminded you that fluency doesn't start with confidence. It starts with connection, with one sentence, spoken out loud, to one real person. Maybe it helped you see that you don't need to speak perfect English. You just need to speak honestly, bravely, human to human. And maybe you're ready now. So here's what I'd love for you to do. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below and tell me, what's one sentence you will say this week to someone in English? It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. And if you're new here, welcome. This is what we do on this channel. We don't chase perfection. We chase progress. With stories, heart, and real moments that matter. So please consider subscribing. It helps this community grow, and more importantly, it reminds someone else out there that they're not alone. And if you know someone who's afraid to speak, send them this video. Maybe this is the sentence they need to hear. Until next time, keep learning, keep speaking, and remember, your voice matters, even if it shakes, especially if it shakes.